The first signs didn't come with an announcement. They came quietly, almost invisibly. A shift in tone, a change in language, a subtle pullback that only those paying close attention would notice. But before we go any further, I want to know where you're watching from right now. Drop your city or country in the comments. This case has reached people all over the world, and I want to see just how far this story has traveled. Because what you're about to hear has changed everything. For weeks, the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie was treated like a race against time. Every second mattered. Hundreds of agents flooded the field. Helicopters swept across the Catalina foothills. Specialized teams combed through desert terrain. Bluetooth signal detectors searched desperately for any trace of Nancy's pacemaker. Everything about the operation screamed one thing. They believed she was still alive. But then something changed. The massive presence in Tucson began to shrink. Personnel were quietly reassigned. The command center, the heart of the operation, was moved to Phoenix. To the public, it looked like a routine adjustment. To investigators, it meant something else entirely. A recalibration. And then came the question nobody wanted to ask out loud. Is Nancy Guthrie still alive? When Sheriff Chris Nanos was asked that question directly, his response was no longer confident. Just weeks earlier, he had expressed clear belief that Nancy was out there. Alive. Waiting to be found. But now, his answer was different. Anything is possible. That phrase hit like a shockwave. Because in investigations like this, language matters. Every word is chosen carefully. Every statement reflects what investigators believe or what they're beginning to fear. Anything is possible is not hope. It's uncertainty. At the same time, another shift was happening behind the scenes. The tools being used. The strategy being applied. Even the packing of the investigation itself. According to law enforcement analyst John Miller, there's a fundamental difference between searching for someone alive and building a case when that assumption begins to fade. When a victim is believed to be alive, everything moves fast. Urgent, aggressive, relentless. But when investigators begin to suspect the worst, the pace slows. Not because they've given up, but because the mission changes. It becomes more methodical, more forensic, more focused on answers than rescue. And that's exactly what this case started to look like. Then came one of the most heartbreaking moments in the entire investigation. Not from law enforcement, not from experts, but from Nancy's own daughter, Savannah Guthrie. In a raw and emotional message, she said something no child ever wants to admit publicly. That her mother may already be gone. She didn't say it with certainty. She didn't abandon hope. But she acknowledged the possibility. And that moment told the world something critical. The conversations happening behind closed doors had changed. Former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe later explained what statements like that often mean. Families in high-profile cases are not speaking randomly. Their words are often guided, carefully shaped with the help of FBI negotiators and crisis experts. So when Savannah spoke those words, it likely wasn't spontaneous. It was preparation. Preparation for a reality that investigators may already be confronting. And yet, despite everything, no official declaration had been made. Nancy Guthrie was still classified as missing. Not deceased. Not confirmed dead. Missing. And that distinction matters more than most people realize. Because in the absence of proof, there is still possibility. But possibility isn't the same as probability. And as the days turned into weeks, experts began asking a different question. Not just what happened to Nancy, but could she have survived it? To understand what may have happened, you have to go back to the moment it all began. February 1st, around 2:00 a.m., a time when most people are in their deepest sleep. And for Nancy Guthrie, that detail could have been critical. Sleep experts describe a condition called sleep inertia. It's what happens when someone is abruptly pulled out of deep sleep. Confusion, disorientation, delayed reaction. For younger individuals, it's temporary. For elderly individuals, it can be dangerous. Now imagine this: an 84-year-old woman, alone, in deep sleep, suddenly awakened violently, pulled from her bed, disoriented, terrified, and unable to fully process what's happening. According to sleep specialist Dr. Pat Byrne, that moment alone could trigger severe physiological stress, even in healthy individuals. But Nancy wasn't just elderly. She had a pacemaker. A pacemaker means one thing: her heart already needed assistance to maintain a stable rhythm. It wasn't functioning normally on its own. And under sudden stress, that risk increases dramatically. Cardiologist Dr. Srihari Naidu explained it simply. When the body experiences sudden trauma, it releases adrenaline. Heart rate spikes. Blood pressure rises. In a healthy person, the body can absorb that shock. But in someone with a compromised heart, that margin disappears. In other words, the danger wasn't days later. It was immediate, within minutes. And then there was the blood, found on Nancy's front porch. At first glance, it seemed like just another detail. But forensic analysis revealed something far more specific. These weren't smears. They were drops, with pale centers indicating air mixing with blood. According to forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Bodden, that pattern is consistent with bleeding from the nose or mouth, likely caused by impact, a fall, or a blow to the face. So now the picture becomes clearer. Nancy may have been violently awakened, physically struck or forced down, bleeding before she even left her home. And all of this before being taken. But there's another detail that might be even more critical. Her medication. It was left behind. Nancy required daily heart medication to survive. That's not optional. It's essential. Missing even one dose can destabilize heart rhythm. Missing multiple doses, the consequences become severe. Doctors have avoided giving exact timelines because every patient is different. But the consensus is clear. Without medication, without stability, without proper care, survival becomes increasingly unlikely. And then came one of the most revealing moves in the entire investigation: the deployment of a signal sniffer. This device wasn't used in a home or a building. It was used in the desert, near the border. Its purpose: to detect Bluetooth signals from Nancy's pacemaker. But according to law enforcement sources, they weren't expecting to find a living person. They were searching for a body. That shift in intent changes everything. Because tools don't lie. Strategy doesn't lie. And when investigators begin using recovery-focused methods, it tells you what they're thinking, even if they don't say it publicly. But before we go further, if you've been following this case closely, take a second to like this video and share it. It helps more people see this story, and sometimes awareness is what leads to answers. Because despite everything, there's still another side to this story, one that refuses to disappear. for every expert suggesting the worst. There's one fact that keeps this case open. There is no proof that Nancy Guthrie is dead. Sheriff Nano said it himself. No one has proof that she's not alive. And in investigations like this, that matters a lot. History has proven something uncomfortable. Sometimes, even when hope fades, people survive. Elizabeth Smart was kidnapped and held for 9 months. J.C. Dugard was held for 18 years. Both cases had moments where hope nearly disappeared. Both cases proved everyone wrong. And in Nancy's case, there's something else. The ransom notes. Multiple messages were sent to media outlets, demanding millions in Bitcoin. But more importantly, they contained details that were never made public, including specific information about Nancy's belongings. Details only someone close to the situation would know. If those messages are real, then there's a reason to keep Nancy alive. Because a living hostage has value. A deceased one does not. Former FBI negotiator Rich Frankel put it plainly. As long as communication exists, there's still something to negotiate. And then there's the pacemaker itself. The signal didn't stop because the device failed. It stopped because it moved out of range. Meaning, Nancy's heart may have continued beating, even after she disappeared. So where does that leave us? Between two realities. On one side, medical risk, missing medication, evidence of injury, investigative shifts toward recovery. On the other, no confirmed death, possible ransom motive, historical survival cases, ongoing investigation. And right now, the case sits in the space between them. Uncertain, unresolved, opaque. Investigators are still working. DNA evidence is still being analyzed. Leads are still being followed. And somewhere, there may be a piece of evidence that changes everything. But for Nancy's family, this isn't just an investigation. It's something far more painful. The waiting, the not knowing, the inability to grieve or move forward. Savannah Guthrie said it best. I don't know what version of me that will be. That's what this kind of case does. It leaves people suspended between hope and reality. And until there is proof, one way or the other, the hardest question remains unanswered. What happened to Nancy Guthrie? If you have any information, no matter how small, contact authorities immediately. Because somewhere out there is the answer. And until that answer comes, hope, however fragile, is all that remains.